Good evening and welcome to the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization's eTownHall Let's Talk Transportation. I am Jade Alexander, your moderator for this evening's event. Thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, we have brought together a group of local leaders to answer your questions about the future of transportation in Broward County. We want to know what you think, and that's because your voice counts. Speak Up Broward's goal is to involve everyone in a discussion about the future of our transportation system. What do you think about getting around in Broward today, about walking, biking, driving, transit? What is important to you? And as in any discussion about transportation, we need to think about how are we going to pay for it? What are some ways that we can fund transportation? Speak Up Broward is an ongoing effort, and the comments that we receive now will help shape the future efforts and the key decisions on the table. Now, let's introduce our panelists for tonight. Joining us is Elly du Pré, the Executive Director of Lighthouse of Broward, who's been working with the visually impaired for a little while, if 40 years can be considered a little while, right? Next is Commissioner Chip LaMarca, Broward County Commissioner, District 4, a bona fide Browaridian, if I could use that term, and huge advocate of job creations. We also have Greg Stuart, Executive Director of the Broward MPO, and kind of one of those big guys behind this whole two-way conversation between your agency and what the public wants and needs. Rounding out the panel tonight is Chris Walton, Director of the Broward County Transportation Department. I understand you're kind of responsible for moving, a few million people a year.
Just a few.
Just a few. Speak Up Broward began a little over 12 months ago, and it's brought forward a lot of great ideas, and we want to hear more. If you would like to participate in the live chat, go to speakupbroward.org. If you'd like to ask a question by phone, dial the toll-free number on the screen and press 0. You can also join us on Twitter by using the hashtag SpeakUpBroward. Whatever way you're joining us, thank you so much. Keep the questions coming. We definitely want to hear from you. And I'll start the questions. I just came back from Europe, where public transportation, mass transportation, is the star of the show. You've got buses, you've got trains, you've got trams, you've got gondolas. I know we can't go that route, but so easy, so affordable, so comfortable, so doable. Is that the vision for Broward County?
I would think some of those things would certainly be part of our future. As you mentioned, I don't know about the gondolas, but we already have buses. We're in the process of developing trains. We can't do subways, obviously, here in South Florida because of the water table. But I would certainly agree with you that the European systems are far ahead of us. We've got a lot of catching up to do.
Okay. And another thing is gas prices, traffic, the environment, many reasons that folks are taking to walking if they can, biking if they can, to work. Obviously not if they live in West Broward and have to commute to downtown Fort Lauderdale. But there is the problem of safety. We've seen too many times in the news some uncomfortable situations for somebody who's been biking. Elly, I know that you work with the visually impaired who do enjoy their independence and the freedom to be able to commute. What's your take on that?
We are actually concerned about the safety of pedestrians in general, not just people who are visually impaired, because the traffic is basically the king of transportation, and the more cars that are out there, especially nowadays, there are cars that don't even make any noise, and sound is very important to a blind person when they're traveling. They need that sound to know when it's safe to cross. But wherever there's sidewalks, wherever there's good crosswalks, wherever there's street crossings controlled by a traffic light, those are the kinds of things that really make a difference for blind people. And I'll tell you, there are some blind people who still have remaining vision who actually use a bicycle in their own neighborhoods to make a quick run over to a quick stop or something like that. So we're very happy whenever there's bike lanes and complete streets.
Okay. We have a question now that's coming in through Facebook. Why invest in public transportation when the roads have already been paid for? Who wants to take that?
I'm going to hit off on that one first, and then we'll move on to have Chris talk to about that a little bit too. Well, most of our streets have actually been paid for, the stuff that has been constructed. There's an ongoing maintenance requirement that we have to have. So when you look at the transportation dollars that we've already invested in what we have, the reality is we have to maintain it. It has to make sure the storm drains are working properly so that way your streets aren't flooded. The traffic lights need to be timed. And Chris, who operates a robust bus system here in Broward, they have to worry about the streets as well, because the streets that the buses operate on, obviously while they were paid for, they need to be maintained. Chris, you want to take it from there?
And I would say that particularly here in South Florida, if you want to talk about streets, you have to talk about congestion. Why do we need a transit system in a congested environment? Because in order to move people efficiently, we need to move people in larger numbers. We can't continue to build more lanes of highway. It just doesn't work. We're pretty much built out here in South Florida. The best way that I believe to move large numbers of people is through mass transit.
Okay. Now remember, if you'd like to ask a question of any one of our panelists here, press 0 at any time. We have a question here from, it's on the online chat. Clive wants to know, how can we pay for additional services or road improvement? What are some of the funding ideas? Oh, Greg, you're smiling at this one.
Yeah,
I bet you that's the question you get asked the most.
Actually, it is, and you know, we get it obviously from the public, from the elected officials, from folks in the social service area, and it's an amazing thing because when you really talk about where we get our current funding from, it's actually from the gas tax. And while we've been wildly successful at having cars that have higher gas miles per gallon ratings, that's actually been a negative thing on the revenues coming in to pay for our transportation system. And so that pure focus, we can't keep doing what we've been doing and relying on a gas tax to pay for the improvements, complete streets, the bus system, port improvements, all the things that are necessary to keep our economy going where it should be. And so we're going to have to look at some innovative ways of doing that. A lot of people didn't like the hot lanes or managed lanes on I-95. It was a Lexus conversation, oh, well, you have to be rich to utilize them. However, those particular lanes actually started a different type of revenue stream for the maintenance of I-95, which is actually a really important thing. There is a test pilot going on right now up in the state of North Carolina where they're actually tolling all of I-95, not just express lanes. And the federal government, the Obama administration, actually has proposed a potential replacement of the gas tax, eliminating the gas tax completely and doing a user fee. And so that's some of the things that we're looking at. I'm not saying that this is going to happen here in Broward. I think our elected officials, our leaders will you know, have thoughtful conversation about that. But as we start running out of money to pay for the existing system, there is going to have to be a conversation about other ways of looking at funding.
Yeah, speaking of the quiet commissioner over here, I've got a question for you. How is the business community getting involved in supporting the transportation efforts and that funding?
You know, we constantly strive to bring business to Broward County, to protect the businesses that are here and allow them to flourish. And people are not going to want to come here. A lot of different reasons people look at our area, but people are not going to want to come here if their employees can't get to work. We've created some opportunities with population centers, for example, in downtown Fort Lauderdale, out in Sunrise, with some new developments. So I believe you're going to start seeing more people, more couples, 2 people in a home have 1 car, for example, live, work, and play in the same area. But as we still have a county that's so spread out, and as Chris mentioned earlier, you know, we didn't, regardless of the water table, we didn't lay this county out in a master plan 50, 60 years ago. I moved here in 1971 at the ripe old age of 3, and there was nothing west of, you know, 1.5 miles west of east, basically. So we planned as we went. Unfortunately, that's where we got. So the business community is behind making sure that we fund and that we figure out efficient and you know, the right ways to fund people getting around, and really not only just their employees, but the goods and services, as we talk about Port Everglades, rail, and freight coming out of there, and then also, you know, people.
Okay. If you're just joining us, we are taking questions and comments about the future of Broward's transportation, and we certainly want to hear from you. There's 3 ways that you can participate: via our live chat at speakupbroward.org, over the phone by calling the toll-free number you see there on your screen, and then you just press 0, or through Twitter at #SpeakUpBroward. I have a question here for Chris Walton, what is the greatest challenge other than funding? We've got that. We need the money.
Yes,
and you've also touched on the fact that, you've got people that are living all the way west that need to get all the way east. I'm sure that's another challenge. What is something else that it's a primary focus?
It is a primary focus, but, and I hate to kind of answer the question that the way you pose it, other than funding, but those things, those east-west challenges, can be solved by funding. The challenges that we have right now, when we speak to our passengers, the first thing they want is more service. They want more frequent service. They want later evening service. They want more late night service. They want more weekend service. Second, after that, what they would like to see is more shelter. They would like to be out of the sun, out of the rain. And we're doing our best, our very best, with the resources that we have to accommodate those needs. But at the end of the day, the reality is, for a county this size, the dollars that are put into transportation are not sufficient to support the needs of the community.
So it always goes back to the funding. Elly, I have a question here for you from Twitter. How does a quality transportation system figure into independence for disabled veterans?
Disabled veterans, that's a wonderful question. We need to pay a lot more attention to that whole group of people. Whenever you have a good, strong public transportation system, it means that a person with a disability is going to be able to get to work, take care of their children, take care of their home, and stay living in their own home and be a real meaningful part of their own family. They don't want to just be the recipient of assistance from their family. They want to be in whatever role they were, as a parent or a grandparent or a cousin, whatever they are. And so when they're able to do some of the activities that the family needs, either take a child to school or to make sure that somebody gets picked up and goes to an appointment, or that they're actually a breadwinner and bringing in an income, that's a huge asset to our community. The more people who are contributing, the better our community is when you're talking about funding, the more taxpayers there are. So if a person with a disability can fulfill all the dreams that they had before they had the disability, you're really getting ahead.
Excellent. We have actually a live call now. Noel from Plantation is on the line. Noel.
Yes, hello. Yes, my question was, Dade County has the People Mover, or I believe they have the Trolley System. Would that be an option for Broward County to have somewhat of a trolley system or a system similar to what Dade County has?
It's an option. But again, it goes back, and there's some very significant differences between Miami-Dade County and Broward County, specifically in terms of how transportation is funded. A few years ago, probably about 8 or 9 years or so ago now, Miami-Dade showed leadership and actually stepped up and taxed themselves at half a penny to pay for those types of transit systems. That is called a dedicated local revenue source, which is critically important when you talk about large capital projects of that nature. The federal government will assist you in building these capital projects, but they will not provide a dime to help you operate them. That's where that half-penny sales tax in Miami-Dade comes in and helps support what they do. We don't have that in Broward. That's why it's very, very difficult for us to attract federal dollars for these major capital projects, such as you mentioned, because we don't have the local support to operate them. It's something that we've kind of touched on here, and I'm hoping that we'll have a little more time to talk about it a little bit later in the discussion. What is really needed to make it, and I would thank my buddy Greg for saying that we run a robust system, but the reality is the system that we have here in Broward is marginally sufficient to do what it needs to do. Ideally, it would be at probably twice the size that it currently is, but those, again, that is certainly predicated on funding.
We have a question here from our online chat. Marcella from Coral Gables. What steps are you taking to coordinate cross-county transportation between Palm Beach and Miami-Dade?
I'll take that one.
That's actually, Marcella, thank you for the question, because that's a great question. We have around 400,000 people a day that cross the county line from Broward into Miami-Dade, and about 230,000 people doing the reverse commute into Broward. So we do a lot of work at the MPO level, the Metropolitan Planning Organization level, with the Miami-Dade MPO, with Miami-Dade Transit, with District 6, which is a separate DOT district. We have two DOT districts here, District 4 in Broward, District 6 in Miami-Dade. Coordinating everybody together is one of the largest challenges we face. Chris, as part of his robust system, which could be bigger, actually operates currently express buses that go out of Miramar and out of Sunrise that take folks that work in downtown Miami or out in Doral to their jobs and then back in the afternoons. That's been wildly successful, and we think that there's the opportunity for more of that. The irony behind the managed lanes that I discussed earlier is the revenues from that are paying for the operating and maintenance of the express bus system down to Miami. And that's actually a really wonderful way of looking at user fees and actually providing opportunities for us to expand our mass transit system. Miami-Dade Transit also operates a bus out of downtown Miami that goes straight to downtown Fort Lauderdale. That provides a whole nother layer of opportunity for folks. But that said, we're only really moving around 3% of the total population that's moving in a car or by bus. Only 3% are choosing to use transit, buses, and also Tri-Rail. So we have a whole other network of folks that we need to also worry about. So we're looking at automobile base. We have our truck and the folks that are moving our goods, our services that we have. We need to be looking and making sure that they're able to get around as well. So there's a lot of things happening in coordination. We also work with Palm Beach County, which is, not necessarily, Marcella, this is going to answer your question directly, but we actually have folks that work in Boca Raton and Boynton up all the way up to West Palm Beach, and vis-a-vis the folks from West Palm Beach working in Broward, Plantation, and Sunrise, and downtown Fort Lauderdale. So those folks are also moving through our system, and we're trying to address all of that. I'd advise you to go look at a particular website. It's called SFTC. It's SFETC. and .com, and you'll actually be able to look at the regional plans that are going on, coordinations with all of our multiple parties, and I think that'll probably help let you at least see where we think the future is going to go.
If you're just joining us, welcome to the discussion. There are three ways that you can ask a question or give a comment as far as beefing up the transportation system in Broward County. You could do it via our live chat at speakupbroward.org. You could do it over the phone by calling the toll-free number, and then you just press 0. We will get to you, or through Twitter at #SpeakUpBroward. I understand we do have somebody on the phone. We have David from Hollywood who has a question. David.
This is David Epstein, a World War II Navy veteran. The Disabled American Veterans Chapter 133 in Pompano Beach has just worked out a system with the railroad from Miami to Palm Beach for all disabled American veterans to ride free. They need to get a pass at the certain railroad stations. I'm not sure which ones, but it is a great step in the right direction. Thank you.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you, David. Nice
Actually,
to hear.
I recognize this gentleman. David is as he said, a World War II veteran, but David was somebody that I conversed with quite a bit. When we did I worked with transit obviously, but when Broward County introduced the VET Pass, the Veteran Enabled Transportation, and Chris and his staff were able to find a grant the first 6 months to do the pilot program, and then we are now funding it. So if you're a veteran, not only the ability to ride on Tri-Rail, but if you're a veteran in Broward County and you make at or below $26,000 a year, and that is the only requirement. So we do take care of our veterans. You can obtain a 1-month bus pass and then renew from that. And we've had some great success stories. So it is really important that we take care of our veterans. We have 120 or 130,000 here in Broward County. So it's a big number, and we thank David Epstein for calling in. His nickname is actually Parachute Dave because he used to pack parachutes in World War II. He's a sweet guy.
May I bump in on that conversation for a second? Sure. Great. One of the things I also wanted to kind of focus with that conversation is we're working with the folks at Tri-Rail and the Palm Beach MPO to extend Tri-Rail up to the Veterans Hospital in Lake Worth, or in, off of North Lake Boulevard up in Riviera Beach. And that's actually going to provide access directly for a veteran to be able to get onto the Tri-Rail system and go directly up to the VA hospital. My father, God rest his soul, was a veteran from World War II, and I used to have to take him up to that particular facility, and he couldn't get to the train. So I know the difficulties that our veterans are currently having just to get to the VA facilities, and that's a huge thing that I think will help solve a lot of problems for our existing vets.
We have another phone call, a live call here from Coconut Creek. Chris, are you there?
Hello, this is Chris. I was wondering about the bus fare and everything. I mean, every time people come in, I notice that they might not have the exact change, and they're not able to put in like $5 and might be able to get change back like 2 or 3. So I was wondering about like if they're able to implement a plan for that, so people who might have either $5 or maybe $10 will be able to break it inside the machine and they're able to get the money back.
Unfortunately, the answer to that is no. There really isn't. We really don't like our bus operators handling money for obvious reasons. But I can tell you in the future what we're planning to do. If you have a smartphone, you will be able to buy your fare or buy your ticket on your smartphone, get on the bus, and the bus will read your ticket so that you won't need to have any cash at all, and you can always pay the correct fare.
We have a great online chat question here. South Florida obviously is a party town. We've got tri-county party people. Billy here says, DUI is a major problem in Broward. What can you do to make public transport a better option for folks that are out having a good time?
That's a great question.
It's actually a very, very good question.
You know, I'll just make a suggestion that I know that there are some organizations, some companies that will help get you a ride home if you're driving. And the last thing we want to do is have somebody in that situation where it costs them possibly their future, their career, or anything terrible like that. One of the things that we should look at is when we have transportation running, i.e. buses or Tri-Rail or a way to get back and forth, that we encourage people, if they're going to go out, starting the evening out, and put themselves in that situation, to use public transportation as opposed to getting someone and having to figure out how to get home. So it's a great point. I spent a lot of time in Boston and use the T, use the trains, and I'm not saying for that reason, but it does come in handy to not have your keys.
Keep those questions coming. 3 ways that you can ask your question tonight as we talk about increasing and making Broward County transportation efficient and doable and comfortable. You could do that by going to speakupbroward.org, over the phone by calling the toll-free number and pressing 0, or through Twitter at #SpeakUpBroward. You know, public transportation, you mentioned Boston, New York. I mean, people don't think twice about that. It's the way of life. Growing up here in South Florida, public transportation had a stigma to it. You know, if you use public transportation, you don't have a car. You grow up and you know, we've grown up, the city's grown, we're running out of space. Obviously, it's an excellent option. What can we do to rebrand public transportation in Broward to make it cool, like it is in New York and Boston?
You know, I think the Wave is going to be a good example of that. I mean, there are some that really believe that streetcars are much cooler than maybe the bus that we run at Broward County, and whether that's true or not, we are going to have the Wave, which is a light rail streetcar type setup in Fort Lauderdale, and ultimately we'd like to expand that. But you know, the reality is there are some other things you can do to not just rebrand the mode of transportation, but the way you use it. And as Chris was mentioning about paying with a smartphone, we have apps that are going to be coming out for smartphones that will tell you when the bus is actually getting there, hence getting you out of the rain or the sun quicker, or you don't run out to the bus stop after work, or maybe you catch it from a mall or whatever it might be. You'll be able to time your transit a little bit better, and I think making it cool, making it easy is what we really need to do. And you know, in process, we'll rebrand the way people get around.
And I just follow up on that by saying that we're seeing that transition take place with our express service to Miami. The buses are Wi-Fi equipped. And we are transporting over 2,300 passengers a day. We're taking over 2,300 cars a day off the road. But we have found that, and I've actually been there myself when the passengers load and board in the morning, and I see the Volvos, and I see the Mercedes, and I see the Lexus park for people to get on the bus to go down to Miami to the medical center. So I think that transition has already started. I think if you provide a service that is convenient, that is reliable, and it's clean and efficient, with perks such as Wi-Fi, I think those are the kind of things that we will have to do in the future to attract those choice riders or people who have the option of a car.
Hey, the perk for me is I've got somebody else doing the driving for me, okay? Nothing like having a chauffeur. I have here a question for you, Elly, from our online chat. How well is Paratransit services working for your clients?
Paratransit service, we actually, the reason that we're connected with the Broward MPO is because we asked if we could do a project to really study two aspects of transportation for people who are blind or visually impaired. And one was to actually just look at the trips they actually were taking and determine what did they use paratransit for, how often did they use it, the timing of the trips, because all of that is information that paratransit takes into account. And then the other was their satisfaction with the service. And one of the things we found out is that paratransit is extremely important to people who are blind or visually impaired. They will protect that service the best that they possibly can. They will complain, I will tell you. I'm not surprising anybody in this group right now that they will complain. But they also will be very protective of it because it's really a life and death option for them. They don't have a car. They may not even be in an economic situation where anybody in their family has a car. If they can walk, if they can use a bicycle, they will do that. But many of them live where there's no safe sidewalk to walk on. So it's extremely important to them to have paratransit. And like I was saying before, it's really actually a benefit to all of us, because when a person can stay living in their own home and have a contribution to our society, it's a much better and healthier thing.
We have someone on the phone. Ernie? Are you there?
Hi, my name is Paul Francis. How are you?
Oh, Paul. Okay, Paul. What is your question? I think we lost Paul.
Hello?
And we lost Ernie. Are you there?
I'm here. This is Ernie. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ernie. What is your question this evening?
Well, I wanted to call about the trolley connecting the east and the west, but the lovely young host, she mentioned chauffeuring around town. I hear that some of the Broward commissioners use their aides to chauffeur them around town, and I'd like to ask Commissioner there if that is true. And why don't...
Well, I drive myself, and I can vouch for that. Yeah, and Greg can vouch for that. No, we don't have chauffeurs, and we don't have any staff that doesn't do anything other than work for the public here in Broward County. So. All
right, well, we have a question here from the online chat from Paul. What are Broward's plans to encourage more use of bicycles for commuting to work, as well as increased leisure use of bicycles? And we may want to add on to that buses are also limited to, 3 bicycles? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like a two-parter. Is there the ability to have more bikes? Because it's like you said, some people are needing a mode of transportation to get to the bus. The bike obviously would be a great option, but if you've only got room for 3.
Yeah, and we went from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. And what we found in our industry that 3 is the maximum that we can safely transport on a vehicle, okay, on the exterior. Rail cars is a different story because you can actually put them inside. So when the wave does come, we will have the ability to put bicycles inside. But at this point, the maximum that we can carry at any one time is 3.
Okay.
Can I get a little bit on the bike lanes as well?
Sure.
Because that's an important thing to actually look at and where we're headed with that as well. Because we have about $110 million worth of bike lane projects going on right now as we speak. In the next 5 years, these bike lane projects are starting to build a network, because what we at the MPO, with looking with our partners, the departments of transportation, Broward County, all the municipalities, said, how do people get around here and how can we offer them the opportunity to have a leisure experience and an actual work type experience where you can actually get to where you might work or where you might go to school or where you might actually have to go to the doctors. And so we've built this network and we're actually slowly moving towards that. But $110 million is nothing to sneeze at, because over the last 30 years, the number of investment in bike lanes and pedestrian facilities like sidewalks, we haven't really been spending the type of money that we're talking about now. So you're looking maybe at 20 to 22 million in the past, and now we're up to 110 and counting. And a lot of that is, I have great staff that's very predatory. Anytime there's a resurfacing project going on, we go in and find out, can you put a bike lane into that? Can you narrow the lane, from 12 feet down to 11 feet, whatever is necessary to encourage somebody to have that opportunity to get on their bike. We're doing a very specific project in the city of Fort Lauderdale, the entire A1A corridor, not just the part that washed away, where we're actually putting in buffered bike lanes and we're putting in wider sidewalks and we're putting in shade trees, so if you're actually walking, you might actually enjoy the experience. So all of these things are really important, and that's part of the transportation system that a lot of people don't actually talk about.
If you're just joining us and you've got a question, an input on the future of Broward's transportation, we certainly want to hear from you, and there are 3 ways that you can do that. You can contact us via our live chat at speakupbroward.org. You can call us by calling the toll-free number and then pressing 0, or through Twitter at #SpeakUpBroward. You were touching about, because we have rain 6 months out of the year. We have heat 12 months out of the year. In order to make it pedestrian and bicycle friendly, commuter, well, even in the car, can't drive with your windows down. I am hearing of projects that are coming up all over the place, like you said. Who decides we are putting a bike lane here, or we need wider sidewalk? Who makes those choices? Does the public have the ability to pipe in and move you enough to say, you know what, they want this, we need this?
We as an organization, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, really they actually come up with the decisions. We look at not just Broward for the bus system and not just Broward for cars and not just Broward for trains and disabled folk, and we actually look at it holistically. And part of this type of program tonight and all the different ways we're reaching out through social media and other ways, just to find out what the public wants. What we found out so far, actually people do want bikes. They want to have bike lanes, even though there's this torrential rains and this horrible heat that we deal with, but people actually want these experiences. So the elected body, I have 37 elected officials that sit on our board of directors, 4 county commissioners, 1 school board member, and the balance all city commissioners. They actually have the opportunity to make these funding decisions, because once the funding goes to one of our implementing partners, then at that point, the decision of, hey, if you're going to take $30 million, we want you to put bike lanes here, that opportunity is gone. So what has been happening on our board, and Commissioner LaMarca was a member, actually they're very verbal. They're saying, my community wants these things. So now, how do we figure out how to make it happen? Again, and I use the word predatory because that's an important word. We're actually looking at projects and saying, here's an opportunity for a bike lane, where that didn't used to happen. And so this sea change of opportunity that we're seeing is, a lot of it is, how do you make your existing system work better? And how do you actually accommodate the bicycle, the pedestrian, all the things? Because, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, there was actually a transportation plan. And Commissioner LaMarca hit on it. When we were kids, Broward used to end where 95 is. And then Broward started moving further and further west, and some folks I know live out there, and including my in-laws. And knowing that, we kind of designed it for the car. And that whole experience was all about the car, and it was your dream to get a car when you were 16. Now, my nieces and nephews who live in Southwest Ranches and out by Weston, their first thing that they wanted when they were 16 wasn't a car, it was their smartphone. And they actually took a long time before they went out and got their license. My one niece actually, she just turned 19 and she just got her restricted license so she can actually drive. And that's because she's moving to Naples to go to college. So that's this new generation. And we have to build our facilities for that generation, because that is where our future is headed. And this is a great opportunity now through this venue and through other things that we're doing with the MPO, things that Chris is working on, things that the county commissioner moving forward with, and every municipality, and including our social services side. It's an amazing thing that's happening right now, and that's why this dialogue is very important for us.
Karen, I hope you're still there. We have a live call here, and she's been ever so patient. Karen, are you there with your question?
Yes, I'm still here. This discussion about bike lanes and making public transportation accessible is right up in line with my question. I'm currently taking the bus to work, but my problem is there's nowhere to park my bike. When I take my bike to the bus, and there's no bike rack. So in all this improvements, I would like to see more bike racks so people can, transport themselves to the bus.
Yeah, we have
and park their bike safely.
We're working on that. We have an ongoing project where we're just over halfway through, where we are through the generosity of some of our funding partners, the MPO, some state and federal grants. We're building about 700 new bus shelters, and many of them will incorporate, where space allows, bike racks. In fact, some of the shelters that are already existing, we're adding bike racks. So we do recognize that. Unfortunately, the limitations typically is the right-of-way, and there are many bus stops where we know we'd love to place a bike rack, but for whatever reason, the right-of-way isn't available. But if there's a specific location that maybe we can help you with, if you wouldn't mind, just call our office maybe tomorrow at 954-357-8400 and indicate that you called in tonight and you have a specific location regarding a bike rack, and we'll see what we can do.
We've got some great questions here on the online chat. We have a huge cruise port here, thousands and thousands of visitors, obviously, all year. Can we use them as a source of funding?
Well, the port is very important to all of us, and whether folks in Broward County from any corner of the county realize it or not, it's a huge economic engine for Broward County. It's an enterprise fund first, so we don't pay property taxes towards it or ad valorem taxes, and you're off by just a few million. We have almost 4 million cruise passengers, and we utilize cruise passenger fees as well as airplane passenger fees for those two separate enterprise funds. So well, we would be able to possibly do something within the port for pedestrians and bikes, not necessarily, I don't think, on the outside, but a lot of transportation initiates there. And as we expand our convention center and move forward with that project, we have a rail station within Port Everglades for freight. So we're going to be utilizing a lot of that to come out of Port Everglades with goods and people. And just one other thing on the bike issue, we live in God's country. We have over 300 days of perfect weather, but that doesn't mean it's perfect weather to ride a bike. So a lot of those things were talked about. One of the other things that Chris didn't mention and Greg touched on, we're making the bike lanes much more safe, not just for us, but we have a program called the B-Cycle. And B-Cycle is it's a rentable bike, and you get a bike and a helmet, and basically you can pick it up at sunrise down on the beach and ride it up to Oakland Park or to Pompano Beach or Lauderdale by the Sea, or there's different places all around the county. And we find that a lot of our tourists and visitors and in a pinch people downtown, if they have to get maybe from one building to the other, will use that. Obviously, it's a little difficult in August to do anything outside, but when the weather's better, we find our tourists and some of our local residents really utilizing the B-Cycle. So it's another option.
If you're just joining us, welcome to the discussion. 3 ways that you can ask a question tonight about the future of transportation in Broward County via our live chat at speakupbroward.org, over the phone by calling the toll-free number, and then you just press 0, or through Twitter at hashtag SpeakUpBroward. I was at the post office the other day, and there was just so much traffic. I was looking through the window, so much traffic, that I just yelled out loud, "This highway just needs a second floor," which speakupbroward.org, which has been an amazing outlet in communicating with business owners and residents and just hearing from the public. And that is one of the questions that was on the website. Is it possible to build overhead lanes on I-95 or 595 to enhance capacity?
We've been working with the Florida Department of Transportation and the U.S. Department of Transportation for a very long time. You know, it predates me. The reality of doing a double-deck road, right now, as Chris and the Commissioner indicated, if we added more lanes on existing facilities, it's about $150 million a mile for a local road. And the reason why it's that number is the acquisition of property along the edges. To double deck the interstate system like they did in California with the 101 that eventually collapsed, there is that potential. I don't know if Florida's ready. I don't know if South Florida's ready for that, but that may be one of the things that we'll look at. And I would really say that if that's something that was of interest, let us know, and we'll make sure that your voices are heard. You know, looking at the numbers that would cost, you know, right now we have an $8 billion funded plan and about an $8 billion need, so on top of the funding. So we need about $16 billion to keep everything going that we have and hopefully get Chris expanded system and have additional rail. To double deck, now you're talking, you're probably pushing that number to $32 billion.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have an online chat question here from Diana. What is Broward planning to do about light and other types of pollution related to transportation? Obviously, we're living in an age where the environment is a big thing to all of us and to the next generation. So what's being done about minimizing pollution with the transportation? You know,
a lot of the biggest polluters, for example, talking about carbon emissions and things like that, are your big trucks. You know, your commercial vehicles, not work trucks, but you know, your semi-tractor trailers. And we're going to take 80,000 of those off the road within a period of time, utilizing freight out of Port Everglades and more freight rail throughout Broward County. You know, the goal is to obviously make the human experience most, you know, the most quality, the highest quality that we can here in Broward County, and that is a big issue. Now, as far as light pollution, you know, I don't know how to approach that other than the fact that we don't have that problem over on the beach with the turtles.
And I would just say from a bus technology standpoint, wherever we can, we will buy hybrid buses, which reduces emissions by, you know, up to 80%. On the paratransit side, we have just purchased 140 propane-powered vehicles, which will go into service January 1st of next year. So we'll be removing all of the gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles off the road, and you'll have 140 brand new 10-passenger paratransit vehicles that are clean burning.
I will tell you that people who are disabled are very appreciative of that because it'll be a consistent ride. You'll know exactly how each vehicle will be laid out the same way. It makes it a lot easier to travel, a lot more comfortable, a lot safer.
Well, you know, and you'll know this and appreciate it. We've gone through a very severe learning curve for paratransit of the past two contracts. Without going into the history, we've evolved to the point where we recognize that in order to provide the highest quality of service that we can to our passengers, that we need to make some significant changes in how we run the program. And through, you know, the county commission, they allowed us to spend $11 million to buy these propane-powered vehicles, which is, I think, puts us on par with any paratransit program anywhere in the country.
We've got Joe in Plantation. Sounds like he's jumping up and down at home. He says trains and subway are indispensable in New York and LA. The wave is just the beginning. Let it grow and become something. Please touch on the wave project. This is huge and it's not being touched on.
Well, we did talk a little bit about it, and really it's going to start, its origin will be downtown Fort Lauderdale, and it will get to north of Broward Boulevard and south of the New River into those areas. It's a 2.8 mile, 2.7 mile run at this point, and the goal really would be to bring the efficiencies into it where it can get to the airport and the seaport and connect the downtown with our airport and our seaport. We're unique in South Florida. I don't know anywhere else where you have an airport and a seaport within literally a football field away from each other, and the getting back and forth, you know, that process, that's what we're trying to link. So the wave is it's a project that was highly you know, it was highly sought after by the downtown business community as well as people who are now, and if you look in downtown Fort Lauderdale, 4,000 to 5,000 new apartments being built down there. So you'll have a lot more people living, working, and playing in downtown Fort Lauderdale. And although that's not the epicenter of our county anymore, we have such a population, it's still a you know, it's the place where people can have that more urban lifestyle.
And if it's okay, the wave is also a first step. The discussions have begun on you mentioned the airport, the seaport, and convention center. The discussions have already begun on an extension that would connect those three entities into the wave, so that you'd be able to travel from the airport, the seaport, or the convention center and into downtown Fort Lauderdale. So the wave is only the first step.
Let's talk jobs. We've got great ideas and we've got great input. By the way, if you're just joining us, 3 ways that you can ask your question tonight about the future of Broward County's transportation via our live chat. You just go to speakupbroward.org. Over the phone, call the toll-free number, press 0, or through Twitter at #SpeakUpBroward. Jobs, jobs, jobs. What does all this beautiful talk about all this upgraded and wonderful, comfortable future of transportation in Broward County mean job-wise?
4 years ago, we were sitting at more than double-digit, 11.1% unemployment here in Broward County, which matched the state's unemployment level, and that was not a good time for any of us. We are now at just over 5% here in Broward County, and the sheer model that we're using in growing and bringing people back here is relies 100% on people being able to get to work. Again, if you're not living, working, and playing in a dense populated area, most people, again, as we have this conversation about other modes of transportation and more efficiencies, are still getting into the car in the morning and they're driving, whether it's West Broward, East Broward, or whatever it might be. So the only way that we can continue to grow companies like our technology companies and our biomedical, we have so many different targeted industries that we've grown here in Broward County through the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance, our economic development group, that we need to make sure that people can get from point A to point B, and really the jobs are dependent on the people. People create the whether it's a product or a service, the people are the key ingredient, and we have to get them back and forth.
And one of the things we're finding, and we've been working with a lot of the other metropolitan planning organizations around the country, and there's about 460 of them, is when they're looking at job creation in their markets and in their region. Broward is very competitive, as the commissioner said, but we can even do better. Because the reality is those folks that are expanding these businesses and are coming down here, they're looking to come down because of the Wave streetcar. They're coming down because of the expanded bus system. They're looking to come down because of our tri-rail system, because you can get from the pool of applicants that are down here, the 6 million people that call South Florida home, to be employees for you faster if there's actually a good, solid transit system put in place. Our partners at the Fort Lauderdale Alliance, and shout out to our good friends there, they have been phenomenally linked with the 6 Pillars effort that the commissioner has been leading in dealing with bringing economic development here. And we've seen that in the Cypress Creek area, we've seen it in Plantation area, and we've seen great success also in the Sunrise area. And when you know those areas are growing, and then obviously the university sector out there by Nova Southeastern. That said, we also need to look at how we expand the streetcar system to those areas, whether it's the Nova Davie area or out to the Plantation area or even up to the Lauderhill area. We need to be providing what the administration up in Washington calls ladders of opportunity to our residents. Those ladders will actually allow businesses to locate here. One of our high-tech firms relocated about 250 jobs recently from San Jose, California to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What a phenomenal thing to say, because they're tech jobs. And to say that they were willing to leave this area of Silicon Valley and come over to here.
Speaks volumes.
Yes, it does.
We have Marianne on the phone with a question. Good evening, Marianne.
Yes, I have some questions and concern about traffic going west to east, particularly to Broward General, the trauma center, with the railroad increases that I've heard about, the additional number of trains. That's going to be a difficult thing, I would guess, for fire trucks, EMTs, etc. There are an awful lot of trucks also in this area, State Road 84, 17th Street, that deliver locally. So it's a very congested area, and traffic is slow as it is. Could my concerns be answered?
That's actually a very, very solid question, and there's been a lot of expression of concern, whether it's the freight coming out of Port Everglades or the freight coming out of Port Miami. Both of those are going to run on both the FEC lines, the East tracks, and the CSX tracks to the west. We've been working with the County Traffic Engineering Department. We've been working with the DOT traffic folks in trying to understand what the impacts are going to be of these, additions, how we'll be able to time the lights so that way once the train does clear, emergency vehicles can get through very quickly. That's actually more on the high-tech side and what can be done through the system. We believe we'll be able to address it. However, there are going to be some places we're going to have to look at either over or under crossings of the rail lines to allow for some additional emergency vehicles. And I think you've hit on a really good subject. I'm glad you brought it up. It's something that we need to be talking to, obviously, our elected officials about, and we are working a little bit harder with that with Federal Highway Administration up in Washington, D.C. to see if we can find additional funding that will actually address some of those critical intersections.
We've got a few more minutes here. If anybody would like to join in this conversation, 3 ways I just want to remind folks. You can ask either live chat by going to speakupbroward.org, over the phone, calling the toll-free number, pressing 0, or through Twitter at #SpeakUpBroward. Great question here. This one might be for you, Chris. Let's talk rail. Can you summarize the various ongoing projects like All Aboard and Coastal Link? He's getting comfortable. I think this is a heavy one.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're in various stages of development. The WAVE project, which is the most prominent at this point because it's funded and it is in the design stages. It's the most tangible, real project at this point. I would expect that we would break ground for the WAVE in probably late 2015. So that project is coming, it's going to happen. All Aboard Florida also is going to happen. I am not as well versed with that, but in discussions I've had with them, they're also looking for a 2016 startup. They have announced that they're building stations in Miami, in downtown Fort Lauderdale, in downtown West Palm Beach, and they've also got a landing place at the Orlando airport. They required the land to build the east-west tracks from Cocoa over to the airport. So they're moving. I understand they've ordered their rolling stock, which is really a key for us in the transit industry. People talk projects, but when you order your rolling stock, you've made a commitment. And I understand that they have. As far as other rail projects, we just kind of touched on the potential of having a connecting light rail line from the Seaport Airport Convention Center over to connect in with the WAVE, and the other extensions out Broward Boulevard to the what do we call this area here? The
Education Center.
The Education Center. So all those things are in discussion, but again, a lot of it goes back to the question you asked me initially. It's a funding issue.
It's the dinero, the money.
That's right.
Online.
Just to touch on the rail that both Chris and Greg mentioned, the previous caller had an issue of a lot of crossings. 2 things to be cognizant of. The project within Port Everglades will allow those trains to be built within Port Everglades, thus eliminating the State Road 84 15-minute wait when they build trains south of 84. The other side of it is the All Aboard Florida is going to be a much shorter train than a freight rail, and you're talking about 30 seconds for a crossing, 30 to 40 seconds for a crossing, no more than a typical red light as opposed to minutes. So those are things that are being looked at, and I know we're all, the fact that the MPO is here in Broward County planning these things out 10, 20, and 30-year plans, so it's important.
We've got an online chat question here I think we have time for. What programs are available for me, I don't have a name here, as a recently disabled person so that I can get back to work? Excellent.
I don't know exactly what the disability is that we're talking about, but there are programs for that. If you're a blind or visually impaired person, of course, the Lighthouse of Broward, the Center for Independent Living, for example, is also here in Broward County, which works with people with other kinds of disabilities. I don't know if this person who's writing is a veteran, but the local office, the local Veterans Administration Clinic here is excellent as well. I invite you to call any of those places. I don't know if I can say our phone number, but can I say it? Okay, well, if you call me at the Lighthouse of Broward tomorrow, 954-463-4217, I'll be glad to get more information from you and give you some help.
And just to build on that, for anybody that actually has other questions that need answered, please send them through the speakupbroward.org, and we'll make sure that they're distributed to the folks that can get you the correct and proper responses.
And this Speak Up Broward initiative has actually been an enormous success. A little over a year, you've had a lot of feedback, and nothing obviously is set in stone. There's still time for folks to kind of shake you guys around and say, wait, but what about me? Obviously, you're very interested in hearing from the community so that you can bring all those thoughts and continue with your plan. How long will speakupbroward.org be available for folks to continue with their questions or comments?
Our plan with speakupbroward.org is to continue this for at least another 3 years. We really think that the success of reaching out to the residents of Broward, we used to do plans and 300 people would show up and they would consider that a success, and that was back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Now we're looking, because of this particular program, tens of thousands of people are reaching out to us. So that's a very different way of being able to communicate and understanding what the needs are of our community. And then we can then inform our elected officials, all 37 of them sit on our MPO, have the opportunity to communicate that back and say, yeah, we are listening to you and we will address your concerns.
Elly, we thank you so much for your expertise and your work with the visually impaired in this community and for offering an outlet. And Greg, you are just an encyclopedia of information tonight. You've definitely been extremely helpful. We appreciate all of your input, which again, you can go to speakupbroward.org and continue asking your questions. Obviously, there's lots of stuff happening and lots of good ideas that are coming on the table. Anybody have a final thought before we call it a night?
You know, the county commission, your city commission meetings, the MPO meetings, these are all public meetings that invite and exist for the public to come and put their ideas forward. And certainly there are forums when good ideas are put forward to get public input, because trust me, elected officials don't have all the answers. They're just members of the community who decided to go represent down at county or city hall. So get involved.
Thank you. Chris, and Chris, thank you as well for joining us tonight. We want to thank you for joining us. We certainly appreciate your participation. Our live chat and phone lines are now closed. If we didn't get to your question or comment, you still have time to go to our website, 3 years I hear, speakupbroward.org, or you can call 954-641-8141 and leave a message there. Our next Let's Talk Transportation eTownHall event is happening on Thursday, October 2nd, 7 p.m. Jot that down. That way you can join us. We're going to have a new group of panelists. And you can also, by the way, take an interactive online survey that we've got at speakupbroward.org. It's a lot of fun, and it invites you and your ideas as well. On behalf of Chris and Elly and Greg, thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.